The dark truth behind famous historical myths. Did you know that everything you were taught about history might be a lie? Were knights in shining armor clean, noble, and chivalrous? George Washington and the cherry tree? Honest to a fault. Napoleon, a short, angry tyrant who just wanted to conquer the world. Cleopatra, seductress or the strategist? You've heard these stories 100 times. But what if I told you none of them are true? And worse, the truth behind these myths is far more disturbing than anyone wants to admit. Let's unravel the dark truth behind some of history's most famous lies. The myth of chivalry. Knights lived by a sacred code of honor. They protected the weak, they fought for virtue. But here's the truth. The code of chivalry was a PR campaign, and most knights ignored it completely. In medieval Europe, knights weren't shining saviors. They were professional killers, often raised from youth to excel in war and conquest. They razed villages, assaulted civilians, and pledged loyalty to whoever paid the most. The stories of rescuing damsels and defending justice were fairy tales written centuries later to soften their brutal image. During the Crusades, knights carried crosses and spoke of holy missions, yet many committed atrocities so vile that even chroniclers of the time were horrified. They slaughtered entire cities, not just soldiers but women and children, all in the name of faith and fortune. The Battle of the Golden Spurs in 1302 was a turning point. Arrogant French knights charged into what they assumed would be an easy win against Flemish militia. Instead, they were annihilated. Why? Because they were weighed down by the myth of their own superiority. The very code that glorified them made them vulnerable. The legend of the noble knight was never real. It was a story meant to inspire obedience, not truth. Our next historical myth is George Washington's cherry tree. This story tells us that a young George Washington received a hatchet as a gift and damaged his father's cherry tree with it. When his father discovered what George had done, he became angry. Young George bravely said, "I cannot tell a lie. I did cut it with my hatchet." Washington's father embraced him and declared that his son's honesty was worth more than 1,000 trees. Guess what? It never happened. It was invented by Mason Locke Weems, a preacher-turned-biographer who realized that posthumous hero worship could sell books. He wrote a collection of fables meant to elevate Washington to a moral ideal, a secular saint for the new American Republic. But beneath the mythology lies a more complex and darker man. Washington owned hundreds of slaves. He pursued runaways with ruthless efficiency, sometimes advertising for their capture in newspapers. He benefited from human bondage his entire life, despite the myth that he freed his slaves. In fact, he only did so upon his death, and even then, only those he personally owned, not the dower slaves tied to his wife's estate. The cherry tree myth sanitized all of that. It gave children a story about honesty, while the adult reality remained buried. A man of immense political skill and vision? Absolutely. A flawless paragon of virtue? Far from it. The myth wasn't just for children, it was national branding. The next historical myth is whether Napoleon was short or not, and that's not the scary part. Napoleon Bonaparte was 5 feet 7 inches, completely average for a Frenchman of his era. The notion that he was comically short came from British cartoons and satirists who weaponized physical mockery to undermine his image. But this myth distracts us from the terrifying truth. Napoleon wasn't driven by insecurity, he was driven by destiny. He was a man who saw himself as the embodiment of national glory. In 1804, he took the imperial crown from the Pope's hands and crowned himself. It wasn't just a power move, it was a declaration. I answer to no one, not even God. Napoleon reorganized legal systems, crushed monarchies, and fought nearly every European power into submission. His campaigns left millions dead. He was more than a general. He was an architect of modern warfare and modern statecraft. The real danger wasn't his height. It was his belief that he was above history, that he was history. One common historical myth you may have heard is that the Great Wall of China is the only man-made object visible from space. It's false. Astronauts have repeatedly confirmed the wall is virtually invisible from low Earth orbit without aid. It's too narrow and made from Earth-colored materials that blend into the landscape. But the real lie isn't about visibility. It's about what the wall really is. Constructed over centuries, the Great Wall is not one wall, but a fragmented series of fortifications. More importantly, it was built on the backs of forced labor: peasants, criminals, soldiers, and slaves. Over 400,000 people died building it. Many were buried inside the wall itself. It wasn't a proud shield of the people, it was a colossal tomb, a monument to imperial paranoia and cruelty, and yet we call it a wonder of the world. It is, but wonder doesn't always mean righteous. Our next historical myth: Cleopatra, the seductress or the strategist? Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of Egypt, is remembered as the seductive queen who used her beauty to control powerful Roman men. But the truth? That myth was written by her enemies. Cleopatra was a polyglot who spoke at least 9 languages. She was the first in her dynasty to embrace Egyptian culture and religion, instead of ruling purely as a Greek outsider. She studied science, philosophy, and mathematics. She was brilliant, politically savvy, and ruled during one of Egypt's most dangerous eras. The image of her as a manipulative temptress was crafted by Roman historians, men loyal to Octavian, the man who defeated her and had every reason to discredit her legacy. So while we remember Cleopatra as a femme fatale, history may have erased the fact that she was one of the ancient world's most capable monarchs, a queen whose intelligence, not her allure, was her greatest weapon. We tell ourselves these myths to feel better about our past, to believe that our heroes were perfect, our nations were noble, and that power was always earned, never taken. But history is never that simple. And if you think these are the only lies we've been fed, wait until you hear what the Vatican covered up for centuries and what a 13-year-old peasant girl knew that terrified kings and popes alike. That story's right here, along with many others, so like and subscribe to Obscura Historia today.